Welcome, the anointed ones. When karma waits, it's because the universe wants the hit to land where it hurts the most. That's a line only a few people truly understand, because most people think karma is some soft, poetic consequence that taps people gently on the shoulder. No, sometimes karma is patient, strategic, and frighteningly accurate. And when it finally arrives, it doesn't show up politely. It shows up like a long-delayed package with interest, signatures, and every hidden detail stamped on the box. If karma had a sound, it would be the quiet click before a trapdoor opens. And the wildest part? Psychologists say that 93% of people believe they got away with things no one knows about. Yet almost all of them eventually face fallout from those exact actions. Karma doesn't need an audience. It just needs timing. And when that timing hits, even the strongest ego starts sweating like someone who suddenly remembers they left the stove on 5 cities away. This video isn't about light consequences or small regrets. This is about the kind of karma that circles a person's life like a shadow holding receipts. The kind that creeps back in ways nobody expects, and definitely not in the ways they bragged about. The type that makes someone pause mid-lie and think, wait, why is my life falling apart like expired jollof? Yes, it gets that real. Because some people don't just learn a lesson, some people get spiritually recalibrated, emotionally evicted, and mentally rearranged by the very energy they tried to weaponize against you. And when it happens, even they have to whisper, okay, I think I deserved that. So buckle up. What you're about to hear isn't rumor, wishful thinking, or dramatic storytelling. It's the raw, unfiltered truth about why their karma hit so hard, so precisely, and so embarrassingly, and why it left them with no choice but to finally learn their lesson. Number 1, karma doesn't hit the wicked first. It hits their illusions. Karma has a reputation for coming in like a storm, but the truth is, its first strike is quiet and deeply personal. It doesn't start by touching someone's money, health, reputation, or relationships. It starts by attacking the illusions they built to protect their ego. People who mistreat others always create a false story in their mind. I'm right. They deserve it. I won't face consequences. Or the classic one, nothing will happen to me. Those assumptions are the shields they hide behind, and karma's first move is to crack those shields until they're standing there completely exposed. When someone goes after a person who never wronged them, their illusion is that they hold power. Their illusion is that you are too soft, too naive, too unaware to fight back. But karma's first lesson is humbling. It shows them that the power they bragged about was borrowed, temporary, or outright fake. And once that illusion falls apart, they feel something they never expected to feel. Vulnerability. Not the kind they admit publicly, but the kind that shakes them internally and makes them question the very identity they were so proud of. Illusions are important to people with manipulative tendencies because those illusions help them sleep at night. They convince themselves they're smarter than everyone. They convince themselves they're untouchable. They convince themselves their lies are airtight. But karma works like a slow, dissolving truth serum. It forces them to see the cracks they ignored. It forces them to confront the reality that their actions were never justified, clever, or necessary. And that realization hurts more than any external punishment ever could. This is why people suddenly become defensive, restless, paranoid, or angry out of nowhere after mistreating someone. It's not guilt. Guilt requires a conscience. It's the shock of their illusions collapsing. They finally see they weren't in control. They weren't the strong one. They weren't the one holding the upper hand. They realize the entire situation was built on lies they told themselves. When karma hits illusions first, it leaves the person mentally shaken, emotionally cracked, and spiritually exposed. That's when the fear truly begins, because they know what comes next will not be gentle. Number 2, their biggest karma, was realizing you were never the weak link. One of the hardest lessons people learn after mistreating someone is the truth about who they were really dealing with. They thought you were fragile, easy to manipulate, or simple to break. They convinced themselves that you didn't know what was happening, or that you didn't have enough strength, awareness, or support to push back. But karma has a way of flipping the script, and when it does, the shock is unforgettable. Their punishment began the moment they realized the person they underestimated was never the weak link. They were. What makes this realization so painful is that it forces them to confront their own misjudgment. They built their confidence on the assumption that you were beneath them. They fed their ego by treating you carelessly, thinking you had no voice, no backing, no spiritual foundation, and no resilience. When life starts favoring the person they tried to harm, something breaks inside them. It's the moment they understand that you weren't powerless. You were patient. You weren't clueless. You were observing. You weren't weak. You were growing. And that realization hits deeper than any revenge ever could. It exposes every insecurity they tried to hide. It makes them replay their actions in their mind, but this time with full awareness of how wrong they were. The embarrassment that comes with that is its own form of judgment. People hate being wrong, especially when their ego was built on the idea that they were superior. So when karma shows them your true strength, your true resilience, and your true worth, they feel the sting in their pride first. They start to see you rise, progress, or glow in ways they didn't expect. Opportunities open for you that they secretly wanted. Peace follows you in places they thought they ruined. Confidence shows up in you after they assumed they drained it out. That's when the truth hits them hardest. They miscalculated everything. You weren't the weakest piece on the board. You were the piece with the most divine protection. Karma didn't need to destroy them. It only needed to reveal the truth. And the truth was enough to humble them completely. Number 3, karma delays to give them time to stop. The delay increases the penalty. Karma is never in a hurry. It waits. And that waiting isn't because it's forgetful or slow, it's strategic. It gives people the chance to correct themselves, to reflect, to stop the harmful actions they've been taking. But most people interpret the delay as freedom. They see the absence of immediate consequence as immunity. They push harder, lie louder, manipulate further, and act as if their choices have no repercussions. That's when karma begins to work in its most terrifying way, by letting time magnify the effect of every mistake. The longer they act with impunity, the bigger the eventual blow. Karma doesn't just punish recklessly or randomly. It calculates the optimal moment to deliver consequences. Every hour they believe they've escaped accountability, they're stacking the fallout. The delay is a silent warning, but it's also a trap because people rarely pause to consider it. They are too busy enjoying their perceived control, mocking others, or celebrating minor victories at someone else's expense. When karma finally arrives, it doesn't hit like a small inconvenience. It hits with precision, targeting every point of vulnerability that has developed during the delay. What they thought was safety becomes exposure. What they thought was cleverness becomes evidence of recklessness. And suddenly, every choice they made without conscience comes back to confront them in ways they never anticipated. The patience of karma makes the punishment far more potent than if it had acted immediately. By waiting, karma ensures that the lesson is unforgettable. It makes them feel the full weight of the actions they thought would have no impact. The delay allows life to build tension, to create situations where the truth becomes unavoidable and where the consequences resonate in ways that can't be ignored, deflected, or minimized. And that is why the person who thought they could escape forever often finds themselves overwhelmed, shocked, and fully exposed when karma finally decides it is time to act. The longer they ignored the warning, the harsher the awakening. Karma's patience isn't mercy, it's strategy, and its arrival is unstoppable. Number 4. The judgment. They feared from others became the judgment they cannot escape. People who mistreat others often live in constant fear of being exposed, humiliated, or shamed. Their every action is calculated to avoid scrutiny, to maintain the image they've carefully constructed, and to convince the world they are untouchable. They whisper lies, manipulate situations, and control narratives, all because they are terrified of judgment. But karma has a way of turning that fear inward, transforming it into something far more inescapable and painful than any external ridicule. When someone wrongs a person of integrity or strength, they believe they are merely evading accountability. They convince themselves that no one will notice, that their actions will remain invisible, and that their conscience can be safely ignored. Karma, however, does not deliver justice in the ways people expect. It doesn't always show up in the form of immediate consequences or public shaming. Instead, it forces the individual to live inside the very judgment they tried to avoid. Their mind becomes a courtroom, their thoughts the relentless prosecutors, and their fear of exposure transforms into a permanent echo. They cannot silence. They start replaying their misdeeds constantly, seeing their own reflection in every failure, every lost opportunity, every awkward encounter. The whispers they feared from the world outside become deafening inside their own head. Every lie they told about you, every manipulation they attempted, every ounce of cruelty they exercised loops back relentlessly, leaving them consumed with anxiety, regret, and the shame they never truly believed could touch them. The most terrifying part is that this judgment is unrelenting. No one else needs to witness it. They cannot escape it by moving, distracting themselves, or manipulating others. Karma ensures that the fear they lived in, the fear of exposure, rejection, and being called out, becomes unavoidable, intimate, and inescapable. They are left trapped in their own consciousness, forced to confront the consequences of their actions continuously. This is why those who once mocked and hurt you begin to crumble quietly, visibly shaken and paranoid. Karma didn't need to destroy them externally. It simply made them confront what they always feared the most, the truth about themselves and the reality of the harm they caused. Number 5. Their karma was losing control over the narrative they built. People who manipulate, deceive, or harm others often live in a world they construct themselves, a carefully crafted narrative that makes them look justified, smart, and untouchable. Every lie they tell, every rumor they spread, every act of sabotage is part of a story they believe keeps them in control. They count on it to protect their reputation, to intimidate others, and to maintain the illusion that they are always one step ahead. Karma, however, has a way of dismantling that illusion with precision, and it starts by taking away the control they thought they had over the story. When someone mistreats you, they usually believe they can dictate how events are perceived. They think they can shape opinions, manipulate outcomes, and ensure that no one sees the truth behind their actions. But the moment karma intervenes, the narrative flips. Lies they told about you turn into evidence of their character. Rumors they spread bounce back in ways they never anticipated. The story they were controlling suddenly becomes uncontrollable, and the people they counted on to reinforce their version of events begin to question, withdraw, or even expose them. The real punishment lies in the helplessness. People who built their lives on deception are forced to watch the truth unfold while powerless to stop it. Every twist of the narrative that once worked in their favor now works against them. Their sense of control, the very thing they prized above honesty and morality, vanishes. And with that loss comes a psychological unraveling. Panic, shame, and desperation creep in because they realize that they can no longer hide behind their version of reality. Karma doesn't always need to hit with immediate force or dramatic consequences. Sometimes the mere act of taking away the story they believed they controlled is enough to destabilize them completely. The collapse of a manipulated narrative exposes their weaknesses, reveals their lies, and leaves them vulnerable in ways they never imagined. Losing control over the story they built becomes the beginning of their reckoning, the moment when they finally understand that their own actions set the stage for the downfall they cannot escape. Number 6. The people they used to laugh with became witnesses to their downfall. One of the most devastating twists of karma is watching the people who once supported, encouraged, or laughed with someone turn into witnesses of their undoing. Those who mistreated you often surrounded themselves with allies, friends, or colleagues who either enabled their behavior or were drawn into their schemes. They felt untouchable, believing that as long as they had their inner circle on their side, nothing could stop them. Karma, however, has a way of shifting alliances and turning observers into mirrors, reflecting every misstep back for all to see. The irony is sharp. Every joke they shared at your expense, every plan they executed to manipulate, and every lie they circulated for personal gain becomes visible to the very people who once cheered them on. These witnesses begin to recognize patterns, inconsistencies, and the truth behind the facade they admired. The people who once thought they were clever, charming, or untouchable suddenly appear reckless, exposed, and vulnerable. Their laughter, their camaraderie, and their shared complicity transform into judgment, skepticism, and, in some cases, silent condemnation. Karma doesn't need to create drama to teach the lesson. The simple act of these allies observing, questioning, or stepping back is enough to dismantle the sense of control the wrongdoer had relied on. Every person who once reinforced their power now becomes a silent testament to their failure. The realization that those they considered loyal, amused, or insignificant can now witness and validate their collapse adds an extra layer of humiliation and introspection. The subtlety of this karmic effect is profound. It doesn't require confrontation, arguments, or accusations. The presence of these witnesses, once complicit, amplifies the consequences because it highlights how the wrongdoer miscalculated not just your strength, but the awareness and discernment of those around them. The network they used to protect themselves slowly becomes a reflection of their errors, and the laughter they once shared at the expense of others turns into quiet, inescapable acknowledgement of their own downfall. In the end, karma ensures that no one who participated, knowingly or unknowingly, remains untouched by the truth, leaving the wrongdoer facing a reckoning that is both public and painfully intimate. Number 7. Karma attacked their comfort. First, because comfort was their shield. The people who mistreat others almost always rely on comfort as their armor. Comfort of money, comfort of status, comfort of routine, comfort of control. It's what keeps them bold enough to harm others without hesitation. They walk through life assuming these shields make them untouchable, believing that as long as they stay cushioned, nothing can expose them or challenge their power. Karma knows exactly where to strike first. It doesn't go after the superficial aspects immediately. It attacks the very thing they leaned on to feel invincible, their comfort. When comfort is disrupted, the cracks in their character become obvious. Money they counted on to project confidence might suddenly vanish or fail to protect them. Status they used to intimidate others can falter or crumble under scrutiny. Relationships they treated like tools to manipulate may turn cold, distant, or even betray them. The shield that made them act with such arrogance dissolves, leaving them exposed and scrambling to regain what they once took for granted. This is where panic begins, because they realize the safety net they relied on was never as secure as they believed. The brilliance of karma is in its subtlety. It doesn't need to hit with noise or chaos. It quietly removes what they lean on the most, forcing them to confront their vulnerability. They can no longer hide behind wealth, titles, or influence. Every decision they made in arrogance, every step taken without conscience, starts to echo back as consequences they cannot escape. Their once comfortable world begins to feel unstable, and the anxiety that accompanies that instability becomes their punishment. Karma's attack on comfort also reveals their true character, how they respond when the things they rely on are stripped away. Many crumble, lash out, or retreat in desperation, and the irony is sharp. All the harm they intended for others now returns in a form they cannot defend against. Comfort, their shield, was always temporary, and the moment it falls, they're left exposed to the full weight of reality. That exposure is where fear, humility, and realization collide, and it marks the start of the reckoning they ignored for far too long. Number 8. They thought they hurt you emotionally, but karma made them lose themselves internally. When someone tries to harm another person emotionally, they often believe they are in control. They assume their words, lies, and manipulations will break the other person down, leaving them shaken, vulnerable, or desperate. They measure success by the pain they think they've caused. But karma doesn't operate in the way they expect. It doesn't just deliver consequences externally. It works in ways that are far more profound. The true punishment begins internally, in the space they never thought would be touched. While they were busy trying to dismantle you, karma quietly dismantled them from the inside out. Every cruel action, every calculated insult, every attempt to undermine your peace started feeding a subtle, relentless chain reaction within their own mind and soul. Their confidence begins to wobble, their pride falters, and the very person they thought they were, sharp, untouchable, dominant, starts to feel foreign to themselves. They begin losing alignment with who they thought they were. The lies they told to manipulate others echo in their own mind. The selfish decisions they believed would empower them instead start to isolate them. They are not just losing influence or control, they are losing themselves. The brilliance of this kind of karma is in its invisibility. Nobody may even notice the change at first, but the person who caused harm starts to feel it most acutely. They wake up with a creeping sense of emptiness, a dissonance between their intentions and their reality, a recognition that their actions have corroded the very foundation of who they believed themselves to be. And the worst part is, they have no one to blame. It is the natural consequence of the energy they put into the world. By the time they realize what has happened, it is too late. Their attempts to manipulate, hurt, or control have boomeranged in a way they couldn't predict. Karma doesn't just punish for wrongdoing. It corrects the misalignment between who they are and the harm they caused. Losing themselves internally is a far harsher lesson than any external consequence could deliver, and it is the part they feel most profoundly. It is the silent reckoning that leaves them shaken, unsettled, and permanently aware of the damage they've done, to others and to themselves. Number 9. Karma didn't hit their life, it hit their reflection. The most terrifying form of karma doesn't strike externally. It doesn't crash into their bank account, reputation, or social circle first. It hits their reflection. It forces them to look at themselves clearly, without the filters, lies, and illusions they've been hiding behind. For someone who has wronged others, this moment is devastating. They spend years constructing identities, creating narratives that justify every harmful choice, and convincing themselves that they are clever, untouchable, or justified. Karma doesn't need to destroy their surroundings. It simply removes the masks and leaves them face to face with the truth of who they really are. This confrontation is brutal because it is intimate. Unlike public exposure, no one else needs to see it. It is internal, unrelenting, and inescapable. They begin to notice inconsistencies in their behavior, the echoes of every lie, and the weight of every action that betrayed someone else. The reflection staring back at them isn't the person they thought they were. It's someone hollowed out by arrogance, cruelty, and deception. That self-awareness, when forced upon them, becomes their punishment. They realize the power they held was temporary, the respect they demanded was conditional, and the control they believed they had was a fragile illusion. Karma's precision in hitting the reflection is what makes it so potent. It doesn't just embarrass or inconvenience, it shatters the ego. They can no longer fool themselves. Every justification they rehearsed for their actions collapses. The recognition of their own flaws, the reality of their own choices, and the understanding of the harm they caused create a psychological weight that is far heavier than anything external. Once someone sees themselves clearly, the fear sets in. They understand the magnitude of what they've done, the futility of hiding, and the inevitability of the consequences they can no longer deny. Karma didn't have to chase them down, threaten them, or intervene in their life overtly. It simply made them confront themselves. And for someone who thrived on deception, manipulation, and control, facing that reflection is a reckoning that cuts deeper than anything else ever could. Number 10. Karma showed them how much power you truly had, without you lifting a finger. The most shocking realization for someone who tried to harm you is discovering that all along you held more power than they ever imagined. They spent their energy plotting, manipulating, and trying to control the narrative, believing they were in complete command. Every step they took against you was designed to weaken you, undermine you, or make you vulnerable. Yet, without you actively retaliating, without you strategizing against them, life began shifting in your favor, and they could only watch helplessly. That is the cruel precision of karma. It doesn't always need your interference. It works quietly and effectively, revealing truths they never wanted to see. This form of karmic justice is devastating because it exposes their miscalculation. They assumed you were powerless, naive, or unaware, but their assumptions were completely wrong. You were building, observing, and aligning yourself in ways they could not detect. Opportunities opened for you that they tried to block. People who once doubted or ignored you started recognizing your worth. Situations that should have been obstacles instead became catalysts for growth, strength, and visibility. Every moment they thought they were winning, the universe was quietly tipping the scales in your favor. Watching this unfold is a type of punishment, all on its own. They see doors opening for you while they scramble for control. They see recognition, respect, or success flowing to someone they attempted to diminish. Their attempts to interfere or sabotage are no longer relevant. The energy they used against you only highlights their failure. The contrast between your rising trajectory and their helplessness amplifies the humiliation. Karma doesn't just correct wrongs, it amplifies awareness. It allows them to see that the person they underestimated, the person they tried to destroy, was never truly vulnerable. You never needed to fight back directly. Your resilience, patience, and alignment with life's truth were enough. And as they stand there, witnessing your effortless rise, They cannot ignore the power they misjudged, the strength they dismissed, and the fact that all their efforts were, in the end, completely in vain. Number 11. Their attempts to destroy you became evidence against them. When someone tries to ruin another person, they often believe their actions are invisible, clever, or untouchable. They lie, manipulate, and scheme, thinking the damage they cause will go unnoticed or untraceable. What they fail to understand is that every move they make leaves a mark. Every manipulation, every rumor, every deceitful act becomes a trail of evidence, and karma has a way of turning that trail directly back on them. The very energy and intent they poured into trying to harm you becomes the proof of their wrongdoing, leaving them exposed in ways they never anticipated. This is the brilliance of karmic justice. It doesn't always require outside witnesses or immediate consequences. Their own actions become self-evident, visible to anyone who looks closely, and often to themselves first. Every lie they spun to control your reputation, every attempt to sabotage opportunities meant for you, every bit of energy spent trying to tear you down is recorded in the flow of life. And when the right moment arrives, those actions reappear as unmistakable evidence, highlighting not only their intent but also their failure. What they thought was a private victory becomes public proof of their misdeeds, and nothing is more devastating than realizing that all the effort they used against you ultimately confirmed their guilt. The irony is piercing. The more aggressive and cunning they were in trying to destroy you, the more undeniable their evidence becomes. Their own schemes, once intended to harm, act like mirrors reflecting the truth of their character. Friends, colleagues, or even casual observers start noticing the patterns, seeing the disconnect between who they pretend to be and what they actually did. Even without direct intervention, the universe arranges circumstances so that their attempts to harm you act as a self-revealing record, leaving them scrambling to cover mistakes that can no longer be hidden. By the time they understand, it's too late. They've built their own case against themselves, and karma ensured it's impossible to deny. The very tools they used to destroy you have turned into a trap, proving beyond question that they were the architect of their own downfall. Their attempts to hurt you became their indictment, and that realization is the most precise and painful form of justice they could ever face. Number 12. The energy they sent out returned in a form they cannot hide from. Everything a person puts into the world has a way of finding its way back, and the energy of those who harm others is particularly relentless. When someone spreads envy, cruelty, lies, or manipulation, they believe it will serve them, that it will give them control, or that it will vanish without consequence. But karma doesn't forget, and it doesn't negotiate. The energy they unleashed doesn't just float away. It returns, often amplified, in a form they cannot hide from or deflect. What they sent out into the world finds its way back, tailored to their deepest vulnerabilities and insecurities, creating consequences that are as precise as they are inevitable. The terrifying part is the specificity. Karma doesn't just punish randomly. The pettiness, the envy, the lies, the attempts to sabotage, all of it comes back in ways that expose exactly what they tried to hide. If they were deceitful, truth rises to the surface and confronts them. If they were envious, they face situations where they are powerless while others flourish. If they were cruel, they experience rejection, isolation, or betrayal. The universe doesn't deliver a generic lesson. It delivers a mirror, and the reflection is exact. They can't escape it, run from it, or spin it differently. This form of karma is particularly unnerving because it doesn't need witnesses. The consequences are internal and external, visible in the cracks that form in their relationships, careers, and peace of mind. The energy they threw out returns like a boomerang, hitting not only their circumstances but also their consciousness. They begin to feel the weight of every action, the impact of every word, and the truth behind every intent. And the more they try to rationalize or deny it, the heavier the return becomes. What makes this so chilling is that it doesn't require effort from the person they harmed. Karma simply does its work. The same energy they believed they were sending outward as a weapon is what comes back to dismantle their sense of security, stability, and superiority. And when it hits, there is no hiding, no deflection, and no excuse. The energy returns in a form they cannot escape, and the realization that they built their own trap leaves them stunned, humbled, and fully aware that the universe cannot be fooled. Number 13. Their karma was watching you rise while they fell apart silently. One of the most intense forms of karmic justice isn't loud or chaotic. It's quiet, personal, and deeply humiliating. It comes in the form of witnessing someone you tried to destroy grow stronger, succeed, and thrive, while your own world quietly unravels. People who mistreat others often believe that if they push hard enough, manipulate enough, or sabotage enough, they will gain the upper hand. They think that their target will falter, struggle, or even collapse under pressure. But karma has a way of flipping the script in the most poetic and agonizing way. It allows them to watch, helpless, as you rise while their own life crumbles. This type of karmic punishment is subtle, but devastating because it doesn't require confrontation. They don't need to be directly hit, humiliated, or exposed. The mere act of observing your progress is enough to unsettle them. Every achievement you make, every door that opens for you, every recognition or blessing that comes your way is a reminder of their misjudgment. They see your confidence growing, your influence expanding, and your peace and happiness accumulating, and they have no hand in it. Their attempts to interfere were in vain, their schemes irrelevant, and their control completely dismantled. The real torment lies in the contrast. While they are struggling, scrambling, or feeling the weight of consequences they never anticipated, you move forward naturally. The very person they thought they could break is now thriving effortlessly. Every misstep they take, while trying to recover or regain control, highlights your stability, growth, and unshakable position. The quiet collapse of their world becomes more glaring against the backdrop of your ascent. Watching someone they once tried to harm succeed is a punishment that no confrontation or revenge could replicate. It forces them to face the truth of their actions. They miscalculated, they underestimated, and they were never in control. Karma doesn't need to scream. It simply allows them to witness the inevitable, your rise and their fall side by side with no escape, no excuse, and no way to turn back time. The silent, unstoppable observation of your triumph becomes their reckoning. Number 14. Karma made them face the one thing they always feared: accountability. For people who harm others, the scariest moment isn't public humiliation, loss of money, or social rejection. It's accountability, the raw, undeniable truth that they are responsible for the consequences of their actions. They spend their lives blaming others, twisting narratives and hiding behind lies to avoid this moment. But karma has a way of cornering them where excuses no longer work. When it arrives, accountability hits harder than any punishment because it is unavoidable, intimate, and permanent. Karma doesn't just punish them externally, it forces them to look at the chain of choices they made and see how every action led to the collapse of the life they thought they controlled. Every lie they told, every manipulation, every attempt to harm someone else comes back as proof that they orchestrated their own downfall. Unlike shame or embarrassment, accountability cannot be shrugged off, ignored, or shifted to someone else. It strips them of all pretense, leaving only the reality of their actions and the consequences they created. The moment they face accountability, it is as if the universe has removed all the buffers they relied on. They feel exposed in a way they never imagined possible, and that exposure shakes them to their core. No one needs to point fingers. The evidence is in the reality they are living, the opportunities they missed, the relationships they damaged, and the peace they lost. The weight of responsibility presses down relentlessly, and they are forced to confront the fact that they cannot manipulate, lie, or evade their way out of this reckoning. Karma's brilliance lies in timing and precision. Accountability often arrives after the delay they misinterpreted as immunity, ensuring that when it hits, it feels unavoidable and inescapable. They realize too late that they were never above the law of cause and effect. The fear they carried all along, the fear of being exposed for their true selves, materializes fully, leaving them shaken, humbled, and painfully aware that every misstep they ignored built the trap they now find themselves in. Facing accountability becomes the ultimate karmic lesson, one that reshapes them permanently, leaves no room for denial, and forces recognition of the truth they tried to run from their entire life. The story of karma is not about luck, coincidence, or simple cause and effect. It is a precise, unrelenting force that moves with intention, patience, and unmatched accuracy. Every action, every lie, every attempt to manipulate or harm eventually returns, often amplified, in ways the offender cannot ignore. From the collapse of illusions to the exposure of their own misjudgments, from the silent unraveling of their comfort to the undeniable power you held all along, karma works quietly but devastatingly, orchestrating outcomes that reflect the true nature of their actions. What makes it most terrifying for those who tried to hurt you is that it doesn't always require direct confrontation or overt punishment. Sometimes it is the internal unraveling, the loss of control, the confrontation with one's own reflection, and the forced accountability that delivers the sharpest, most unforgettable lessons. Karma ensures that the person who underestimated you sees the full truth, that you were never weak, that you never needed to fight to rise, and that the power, resilience, and clarity you carried were always beyond their comprehension. It doesn't just correct wrongs, it highlights every misstep, magnifies every error in judgment, and leaves the person who harmed you fully exposed to the consequences of their own making. The rise of the innocent, the collapse of the manipulator, and the quiet, inevitable justice that follows is a story of precision, timing, and absolute fairness, even if it doesn't feel fair to the one who created the chaos. Ultimately, this is more than just a lesson for them. It is a reminder for anyone watching that life observes, balances, and never overlooks the energy we put out into the world. The universe has a way of making sure that truth always finds its place, and that those who attempt to harm others eventually face the very consequences they worked so hard to avoid. The power of karma is silent, relentless, and undeniable, and it serves as the ultimate equalizer between those who act with integrity and those who act with selfish intent. If you found this video powerful and eye-opening, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our deep dives into life's hidden truths. Like this video, if it hit home, comment your thoughts or experiences below and share it with someone who needs to understand the force of karma. Stay aware, stay strong, and remember that the universe always keeps score. God bless you.